Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds. I'm Nerd Steve, and today I'm hanging out with Chance from Chance's D&D Spellbook. You also have a Pathfinder thing going on too. I'm gonna have to add that to
Yeah.
the links below.
Sure. If you don't feel like that's a betrayal of your core gaming system, then
Nah,
yeah, you're
I'm
more than welcome
actually
to it.
I'm actually getting ready. I'm getting ready to play in a Pathfinder 2e game myself anyway. We just like games here. It's just that we've always just been
Yeah.
big D&D heads, and you know, unashamed, unabashedly so about it. And so one of the reasons I haven't really gotten on board with Pathfinder so much is like if I'm going to play D&D, I'm just going to probably play D&D. All right,
Mhm.
or any fantasy RPG for that matter, right? I know, and I know there's a bunch of them out there. Um, it's just the way I'm wired, right? Like if I'm going to look at another system, I'm probably looking at a completely different genre.
Makes
So,
sense. Yeah.
but
I think Pathfinder 2e is much more diverse in terms of character creation by leaps and bounds.
it
But
it is.
mhm. But Wizards of the Coast, looking at the latest Unearthed Arcana releases for feats, looks like they're heading in the same direction. So who knows how it'll end up being, right?
Yeah, so we did a session 0, and like I like the character creation, and basically how you just start with all tens, and then different choices give you bonuses up and down. And it does appear like um the different choices you make seem to be more interesting than they were in first edition Pathfinder or third edition D&D, right? Because
Yeah.
like everyone would be like, "Oh, it's so much better because you get all these granular decisions." I'm like, you know, if plus ones and plus twos is what turns you on, sure, I guess. But like generally, if there wasn't anything like interesting. It was like if you made a chain of decisions, you get all these bonuses to do a thing. But in itself, it was just math, really, right? When you break it down.
Yeah.
But in so far as I'm looking at 2, it seems like there is some of that, but there's more other things that are kind of more interesting than just like plus ones and plus twos, depending on those choices.
Hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. I find there's more care built into the races or the ancestries rather, and the various heritages that go along with them. It just I have a very creative mind in terms of characters. So when I look at all of that, I'm like, yeah, there's a lot you can do with these guys. The goblins especially.
Yeah, that's what I'm playing. I'm playing a Charhide
Oh,
Goblin
very nice.
Alchemist Bomber, and like
That should
when
make for a lot of fun.
I guess one of the guys is like, "Hey, does anybody have their character art or art they want to use?" And I just sent them the Nerdarchy Goblin Bomber.
Oh, that's
I'm
so
like,
perfect. That's, that's
we,
awesome.
I'm like, we are the art. So
Live vicariously through. Yeah, it's all preordained, all of it.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I don't know. We've never had anything particularly against Pathfinder, just nothing really for it, right? It's like if we're gonna play D&D, we're gonna do this.
And to
So
and to be fair, 5e its popularity is only showing signs of increasing. Right? I don't think another game system is going to detract too many 5e players.
nah. So I mean, and right. That's the other thing, right?
Mhm.
It's done really well. For us, it was like it felt like because we had stopped playing D&D for a while and had moved on and playing. I mean, at that time, I think we were playing a lot of Mutants and Mastermind, and we didn't even know there was going to be another edition, and that they were doing D&D next. So we came back, and it felt a little bit like coming home. Just
Mhm.
because, even more so because it just had so much of the stuff that we were used to from previous editions, and it's like it seems like they just did a good job of kind of like picking all the best stuff somehow.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that. I think the fact that it was so streamlined is really what led to almost a new renaissance for the hobby in general. It's very easy to pick up and just start playing immediately. Very nice.
And Critical Role. So and then there's Critical Role.
I don't know. That's one of those interesting, like what came first, the chicken or the egg kind of things, right?
Yeah.
Like if anything, I think it's the streamlined nature of 5e that led to the prominence of various streamers like Critical Role.
Well,
But
so
I don't know.
they were already having success and they were playing Pathfinder.
Oh, very interesting.
So they were already having a degree of success, and then they switched over to D&D, which I'm sure that didn't hurt, right? And then and then that blew up. I mean, it's crazy to think that 30,000 people would watch a D&D stream live.
It's true. I mean, I don't know. I look at like the last 20 years as a whole, and I don't know, if you go back 20 years and you tell anyone just on the street that there's going to be a point in time where you're going to be able to make a living playing a game involving rolling dice pretty much constantly, I think they look at you like you're crazy, right? Like genuinely crazy.
Well, not even playing dice, right? Like, because like at least that might mean like shooting craps or gambling or something, okay. Right? But like I would break it down to like making a living, as adults playing make believe, essentially, right?
Yeah, pretending to be orcs. Yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah, we're hanging out with our imaginary friends, and it's it is crazy, I'm like a couple years into this now, and we, last year we hired our first full-time employee, so it's been a journey, right? Like,
no doubt.
Like we started this thing thinking we were going to make a business of it and do something with it, but never knowing like really where it's going to go and could go. I still don't really know. Like I feel like the horizon just keeps getting wider and wider. So it's exciting.
It really does.
So what got you into YouTubing and deciding to do? And also, not only did you decide to be a YouTuber and do D&D, but it's super specific niche within D&D.
It's true. Very accurate. So in terms of YouTube in general, it took me like months to really land on it. And I was working sales at the time, so I had a lot of time to think on my own without anyone telling me what to do. I worked car sales, and it's a very interesting job because as long as you do good, you can get away with murder. So I had a lot of time to think. But I really want to be, like, if I'm being completely honest, I really want to be like a great father, right? And I've always wanted to be that ever since I was a kid. Like that's kind of like the end goal at every stage of my life, really. And I spent a lot of time thinking about like what kind of a dad I wanted to be. And I ended up settling on the idea of being a father that could always be there for my kid, right? Like no matter what. Not to like the point of being a helicopter parent, but if they needed me and I wasn't able to be there, that would kill me inside, right? So I was thinking about that, and I'm like, well, if I want to do that, I can't really have a job, like not really. And I would feel terrible if I had a wife who worked all the time and I was left at home doing nothing, right? On the basis that my kid may or may not need me, it seems kind of silly.
Well, I would say that, spouses that stay at home hardly do nothing, but...
fair point. But
listen, man, I'm just trying to keep you from getting murdered.
It's true. And even in a more general sense, I don't know a single girl currently, or maybe that I've ever met, that would be willing to accept that premise,
Yeah.
Anyways, so it got me thinking. I'm like, well, I need to be able to make money, and if I need to make money and I can't have a job, how am I going to go about that? I'm like, well, I could start a business, I could write a book, and I've come close to completing books in the past, so it's not a huge deal. And I have ran businesses in the past as well, but it got me thinking, like, well, if I can do that, then why am I not doing that already? And the honest answer was I didn't have a big enough audience. Not enough people were listening to me. So I had to figure out a way to get more people to listen. And that's what got me on YouTube. I researched a lot of other platforms, but YouTube has a very unique algorithm, and it's very possible to go from 0 to 1,000 very quickly. So from there, it was just finding something I was passionate about. And growing up, my dad was something of a nerd, and I grew up playing the Baldur's Gate games, and they're, of course, based on AD&D. So D&D was something that was becoming more popular, and I had a lot of friends who had played it. So I started volunteering at Adventures League, figuring out the game, and yeah, that's how I landed on that channel. And I've always been a caster in almost every game I've played. And I started DMing, and I realized not a lot of people understood how to be a caster. There are too many questions about the spells and the rules, and just tons of detail stuff. And no one online was really covering it. They were doing a lot of top 10 lists and stuff like that. So that's where my niche came from.
Well, and also you took a little bit of a different approach because you animate and draw, the spells, and I mean, we even did a little crossover with you. You had reached out to us,
Yeah.
and then we saw what you're
that was
doing,
amazing.
and I was like, oh, this is really cool. And you're like, hey, can I do one of your spells and put it on on my channel? And I was like, well, you can, like, we'll do that if you want, but if you want, you could do it and we could put it on our channel and talk about it and see if we can't get you more reach. Because I know as a when you're a smaller creator, it's always much better to be on the larger creators platform than have them on yours, right? Because it tends to drive more traffic, and get more eyeballs on the thing that you're doing. So, and whenever we can, we like to lift people up and try and help out.
Yeah, I'm incredibly grateful for that. Like, very incredibly grateful. And yeah, there's a huge surge in traction after that, and it's very easy to see when it happened on my metrics. Very easy to see.
Nice, which is good. We're glad it worked out, and then what you're doing is fun, right? So it's.
I agree. I really do enjoy it.
So, how did you get into animating?
So when I was working car sales, you have to figure out ways to stand out. And usually the best way to do that is so your whole job selling anything, it's not really to present the product in a certain way. That's part of it, but that's not really it. It's to make the customer feel like they are making the best decision for themselves, And the best way to do that is to make them feel like they have all the information they need to make an educated decision. And I can send people pamphlets, but not a lot of people really like reading that much, right?
Yeah.
But listening to people explain things, and ultimately there are different types of learners, right? And I've kind of spent a lot of time thinking about how to incorporate all learning styles into my videos, and I've gotten pretty close to figuring it out. So yeah, that's what all started, and I just transferred the skill set over to D&D.
So when you're making those videos to sell cars, did you make them kind of in the same vein that you do the spells, where it's like the information's there, but you also present it in a fun way, and and try and make it interesting. It's not just like vomiting the facts on people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I actually used my template for cars for the first couple spell videos I did. Like, exactly. So they were set up almost identical from the get-go, and I've made several tweaks and modifications since then, obviously. But yeah, it was very easy for me to make that shift. Very easy.
So I'm kind of curious, what was that like when, how did you deliver this message to people that are buying cars?
Yeah,
sure. They come into the showroom and you're like, here, watch this video, or.
Yeah. So how it usually worked out is they would come into the showroom. I'd sit them down, do a quick needs analysis, figure out what they were looking for, why they were looking for it, all that good stuff. Take a vehicle out for them, pull it out front, take them on a test drive, and then if they wouldn't buy that day, they'd go home and think about it. And that's where most salespeople typically give up. But I had all their info already, so I'd make them a video. If you were buying a car, I'd be like, hey, Dave, I understand you were looking at the Hyundai, I don't know, Santa Fe, let's say. Here's just a couple of specs, some cool facts about it, some interesting features that we didn't have a chance to go over while you were in the showroom, and here's the history behind the company itself. And then I'd send them off with that. It's pretty good.
So now you need to do a wizard salesman person that sells spell books. And and have him go through all these different pitches.
I mean, I'm usually a DM the vast majority of the time, so I get my fill still. I'm notorious for selling cursed weapons. Or my favorite is if they cross paths with a rival wizard or something of that nature, and there's some kind of an altercation, the wizard will go, you know what, I feel bad about it. Let me make you a magic familiar or something like that, and then he'll just cast polymorph on them because they technically give permission, right?
Yeah.
It's yeah, that's what I like about spells, man. There's so many cool things you can do with them. So many. I don't know. I find they're um, oddly underrepresented in the D&D space. And I mean, there's Zbashu, but he doesn't really produce a ton of videos anymore, and a lot of his videos were taken down. So it's yeah, it left like an interesting power vacuum, and I've been doing my best to fill it.
Oh no, I didn't know he had videos taken down.
Well, he took them down, so maybe
Okay.
I'm misrepresenting what happened, but yeah, he took them down and he uploaded them onto different platforms. He did it during the COPPA nonsense that was going
Oh, he
on.
got scared.
Yeah, to be fair, I was terrified as well.
Yeah.
I have a ton of videos with disclaimers saying it's not for kids. Looking back at it, it's so
It's like
cringy, but
it's not for
in the
kids. Fuck,
moment,
fuck, 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 fuck.
yeah, exactly. Well,
Yeah.
animators were being singled out, so I'm like, God damn it.
Yeah, I
There
guess so because
was
they have characters and
yeah, like in the COPPA documents, it literally pointed to animators, and I get why, but
yeah.
animators historically have always had a hard time on YouTube, so it's interesting, very interesting.
Well, it's a lot of work, right? Animating something is a lot more work than just turning on a camera and me and Ted just babbling about whatever the topic is, actually having to draw everything out and make the animations work. Uh,
Yeah,
or otherwise
exactly.
everyone would do it, right?
That's true. To be fair, I do kind of cheat, like what Zbashu and Puffin Forest and Dingo's Doodles do. They're very different from what I do. Mine is almost all done by a program. Theirs is a lot more involved. So
Yeah.
because of that, I have a like it takes Z like oh, I forget how it worked out, but it was like something to the effect of 8 hours of effort per 1 minute worth of animation, right?
Yeah.
And I look at that, I'm like, no, thank you. Not
Yeah.
not it's not that I don't like the focus for it, it's just the potential upside. It's very difficult to justify, right? At my current rate, even with the more advanced content and the more advanced format that I'm doing now, I can still get upwards of 7 videos done within the span of a day. And that's leaps and bounds better than the alternative.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I remember seeing one of these videos. And it was like 8 minutes long. I was like, oh my god! So I had to click
Mhm.
right because usually they're much shorter than that. And it's like halfway through, it just switches to him talking. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's why.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And he's tried doing interviews at the end. Honestly, Zbashu is probably like outside of yourself, of course. Zbashu is one of my other probably like YouTube crushes, if you can put it that way.
well, he's by
Um,
far the best animator. Like, just like
yeah.
technically, I mean, he was. That's what he did. He was a professional animator. He did the Red
Hmm.
Bull commercials. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
so is and where everyone else that's kind of doing it, that I've seen and I've talked to anyway. I can't say everyone, but the people that I'm aware of that are doing it, they're all kind of amateurs that started doing it on YouTube and just had some success with it. Uh,
Hmm.
like
Exactly.
like Dingo Doodles was fun because like I saw her put up her first video. Like I saw it that day. It just got recommended to me, and to
Hmm.
see it go from like, and it was already at like thousands of views with the a channel that like had nothing on it, and and to the next day going to Nate and Ted and be like, hey, you got to check this out, and it was at like 99,000 views, right? So overnight,
Hmm.
which that
Yeah,
was pretty crazy.
she was an interesting case because she had a huge fan base outside of YouTube, right? She made comics, and they a huge amount of them transferred over, and the YouTube algorithm recognized that and gave it a massive push. And then after that, she did a pretty great collaboration with Puff and Forest, and it was it was very comedic. They've
Yeah.
talked about it a lot since then. And Puffin went on. He's like, it was kind of funny when you showed me this video, because she was asking him for advice,
Yeah.
but she was already leaps and bounds past where he was. He's like, I
Oh,
can't tell you what you don't already know.
yeah. That's funny.
Very
I didn't
funny.
know the backstory. I didn't realize that she, had a big audience for some reason. It makes sense though, because Runesmith is the same way. Like his meteoric rise was because he was part of XP to level 3, and when when he decided to do his own channel, Jacob was like, go check it out. So yeah, when YouTube notices when you start a channel from with nothing and you instantly have like 25,000 subscribers, they go, oh, there's something here. Let's explore this, right? As opposed to someone else who just puts up a video, even if it does like relatively, well for a new video, gaining that kind of traction instantly. The algorithm, I guess, just jumps on that. So
Yeah, 100%. It is. And once again, I love, like, it gets a lot of flack, especially in recent days, but YouTube's algorithm, it's the only site like it, right? Like,
yeah,
really, there's a small argument to be made for maybe Facebook, but it's not the same. Like, you can go from a total obscure nobody to having hundreds of thousands of people listening to you with bated breath, right?
the the thing, the thing about the algorithm that people don't like is like it holds up a mirror to you, right? And what it's showing
Can.
you is what you really gravitate towards and watch, and you're like, no, that's not true. But it's just factual information. It's just data, right?
Mhm.
It
Yeah.
doesn't have an opinion. Where like we
There's a
have a notion, like I really like this creator and I watch all their stuff, and they're going, no, this is what happens. They're showing this is what happened the last time we put their stuff in front of you. You ignored it. You don't like that anymore. This is what you've been clicking on. Here's more of this. So
yeah.
it's kind of
It is
interesting.
very unfit or unfeeling. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
a
Um,
cool mistress.
it
So
really is.
during the apocalypse here, do you find yourself gaming more or less or the same?
Good question. I think I'm doing better than ever, to be honest. But the channel's at this weird, like, my growth rate's been incredibly consistent, right? Very consistent. And I'm actually really surprised at that, because it's like my upload schedule for in recent months has been hit or miss, just because I've had a lot of personal problems propping up. But um, in a general sense, my upload schedule is really strange in terms of the amount of content I could put out. Like, there were relatively long periods of time where I was doing a video every other hour, and YouTube didn't really pick up on that, which is
Mhm.
interesting because it flies in the face of what I initially thought about the platform. But looking back at it, um, a lot of the content I have is evergreen. So for that reason, it's still benefiting me to this day, even if the initial boost wasn't quite there. Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, sometimes it's weird. Like sometimes it's like more often seems better, and then other times it's like like
Yeah,
pulling back on the amount of content you do actually seems to help. So it's hard to say. Uh,
there is diminishing returns for sure. I feel like most YouTubers are unanimous on that. Um, because YouTube only will give 3 recommendations a day, really. So you have to kind of time it out. And even then, sometimes there's conflicting variables. Like, if another uploader or if another creator that someone subscribed to uploads the same time as you do, based on that subscriber's viewing preference, they may get the other notification over yours. So it's really, there's a lot to consider, but I think you'll be hard pressed to find a subscriber that believes less content is the way to go, right?
yeah.
From an algorithmic standpoint, it might make sense, but if I was a viewer, I would probably want more content than less, right?
Well, I will say, we had a bit of a debacle here.
Okay.
Um, and at some point, like we did this experiment with like taking down all of our old content and unlisting it.
Hmm.
To see like if it made a difference, like in like someone's entry point to checking out Nerdarchy. And after
Gotcha.
months, it didn't seem to really change anything at all. So I was like, I'll just turn it back on. Well, what I failed to consider was we had done a bunch of unlisted videos that were just live streams that we would do for our patrons. I don't know, about 50 or so. So we
Okay.
carpet bombed everybody's feed with like 50 videos, and like 500 people unsubscribed like instantly.
Oh, what? Oh,
Yeah. So
Oh man, you know what? To be completely honest, then Dave, if they unsubscribed for that reason, maybe you didn't want them as subscribers
yeah.
in
Well,
the first place. You know?
YouTube is so weird. The viewers are so weird sometimes. Not you guys are hanging out with us now and are watching later. The other ones.
Yeah, I better be careful.
Yeah.
With that.
No, because like you'll get a comment and someone's like, "I've been watching your videos for 3 months and I've decided to subscribe." I'm like, "Yay!"
Well,
yeah. On a personal level, like I will be like, "Oh, this looks cool," subscribe. Like, and whether I'm going to whether I watch more videos or not, I don't know. It's like just like my feed is not very well curated, and I just subscribe willy nilly. So to me, like it's just like the opposite of that. Just is odd, right? Because I'm like, yeah, it's just like a click on my computer somewheres, and things will show up or it doesn't show up. Because actually, it doesn't really matter what you subscribe to anyway, because YouTube is just going to show you what the things that you've been kind of watching anyway.
It's true. I don't know. It all depends, right? I do think I'm always grateful. Even the weird messages I get. We have different weird messages though. Like you get that. I get like these very specific questions, and I love them because it kind of challenges my own thoughts. But every once in a while, I'll get like a question that I specifically addressed in a video, and I try not to like respond in a way that comes across as snarky, right? Because logically, the best course of action is to just respond with the timestamp. But I feel like that's such a snarky way to respond to someone, right? And if they're taking the time to comment, like watching a video is one thing, but taking the time to go down beneath and type out your thoughts in a way that makes sense I think that's a pretty big deal, right? And I make a point of responding to as many comments as I can, but recently especially it's been really hard to keep up with them. Really hard.
I used to I think up until like 50,000 I literally responded to every comment. Mm-hmm. And then I just got overwhelmed at a certain point, and it's just like I can't. so I find myself replying to comments far less than I ever did before, just because I find it like overwhelming. So every once in a while I'll just like go in and reply to some comments. But yeah, like it used to be something I would do, and it just, like I said, it just got overwhelming, and you're like, I can't respond to you all now.
Yeah, when I was first starting out, it wasn't a huge deal, just because I was really just a brand new channel, and a lot of the comments were like, hey, I really appreciate this content, you're doing great, or hey, keep up the good work, or every once in a while someone would suggest a video for me to do in the future, but I go in alphabetical order, so it's not really a thing. But it was really simple to respond to those though. But within the last, I want to say 6 months or so, I've curated this audience that really is hungry for this information, and they find themselves in a lot of weird predicaments, and they kind of ask me these detailed questions, and I'm like, oh God, like I put up a Lehman's Tiny Hut video yesterday, and I got a lot of weird comments involving how you can move it, but it's centered on self, but it only deactivates if you leave its area. So if you're on a cart, then and the cart moves, then does the hut move with you, or does it stay in place, and do you kind of edge your way out of it? And it's just really like the raw answer is no, it's focused on self when it's cast, so where you are is where it's cast, and if you are pushed out of it or if you leave it, then it deactivates. But rule of cool and rules as interpreted, it's a very different answer. So I find I'm giving 3 answers to these questions.
Yeah, I think I seen someone talk about putting it on a dragon's back or something. And I think like the Crawford answer is nope. It's it's fixed to wherever it originates from. Mm-hmm. It doesn't go anywhere. So I don't know.
Yeah, but it is one of those things, and I've been trying to give more advice to dungeon masters as of late because I
Yeah.
feel like I've created this weird, at least like I'm obviously not massive to any extent, but within the group I have who listen to me, I feel like I've made this weird paradigm shift that is providing players with the ability to thwart a lot of the tools that the dungeon masters use. So I'm almost single-handedly inverting the playing field. And I don't really like that because it shouldn't be an adversarial relationship. So I've been given a lot of advice to dungeon masters in my later videos on how to deal with these problems if they arise in a way that still makes sense. It's very, very interesting. Very interesting.
So how often are you gaming these days?
Ugh, good question. In terms of playing with friends, maybe like 3 times a month. Recently, Adventures or my local Adventures League chapter reached out to me within the last several months. So maybe using the term recently isn't right, but and they've wanted me to run games for them. So I've been doing that online, and it's been doing pretty good. So in terms of those, I don't know, like maybe 2 to 3 a week, I want to say.
Okay, it's
So
pretty
I've been,
busy.
yeah, pretty busy. Pretty busy. It's nice though. I enjoy it. I've been writing a lot of one shots lately, and I find I miss writing, as weird as that is to say, especially being a video creator, right? But anyway, so I've been doing a lot of that, and I don't know. A lot of the people who download them really seem to enjoy them, so I think I'll keep doing that.
Well, I imagine for your style of video, like you're scripting, so
Hmm.
you're writing anyway. You're a writer, right? Like, so there's all kinds of different forms of
Yeah,
writing.
true.
You
And
know?
my I don't mean to brag or anything, but my capacity for sitting down and typing for long periods of time is next level. It really is impressive. Like my one shots are usually about 30 pages or so, and they're very in depth, and they have about 30,000 words in them. I want to say on average, maybe just over that. I forget. And I can usually get one done in about 3 days if I do nothing but work on that one shot. It's
So
really impressive.
so when you're doing your own material, do you do? I think you write out a lot of your material.
Yeah, a lot of it stems from my time in Adventures League, like actually playing in person when I was learning the game. Because I figured after I had a good grasp on characters that I should probably pay my debt to the group and be a DM. And I came up with my own adventures and I kind of ran them in the heat of the moment. But eventually they got refined enough to where I almost had them memorized. And that's what I'm typing out now. So
Yeah.
it's they're very nostalgic when I read through them and whenever I do edits on them. It's a lot of memories attached to them. It's very fun. I enjoy it.
Yeah, so we tend not to do quite as much prep around here. And we just kind of wing it a lot of times. But you know, it's whatever works for everyone. Although more recently, I've started doing a little bit more because a lot of times I'll use D&D Beyond, and you can put the encounters in there, and it just makes
Mhm.
it a lot easier. Um, and yeah, I'm always kind of like picky on what kind of stuff we're doing. Plus, we've been doing a lot of like where we tend to like have an endpoint for our games. So it's like, well, I do have to kind of maintain this story structure so that it ends on time. You
Mhm.
know, within this confines of 12 sessions or whatever we're doing. So it does help
Exactly.
with that.
I think the idea of storyboarding is probably more important than the details itself, right? Like if you have a certain start point and an end point, everything that happens between those two, as long as they do connect, is kind of inconsequential, right? At least from the dungeon master's perspective. So that's probably I think we do it about the same way, to be honest. Although when it comes time to put my thoughts on paper, I have a nasty habit of I don't know, maybe um, being a little bit of a perfectionist, probably
Yeah.
a lot more than I should be. But
So
it is
when we
go
did
for it.
D&D in the castle, like we spent a lot of time actually, you know, we would do weekly meetings to because we kind of like did this overarching plot that ran through the three different campaigns that were being run. So we spent more time working on kind of like the sandbox and like the story itself. And like that, doing an event like that, like we definitely felt a lot more pressure to like be
Mhm.
way more prepped than we normally would be, because it was like each table was like 30 grand. So yeah, it was like high stakes D&D.
Yeah, no doubt. Literally, man.
Yeah,
It's like a
compared to like normally, like I'll run a game and I'll write like 3 sentences down, and and you just lean on the players, and they'll do stuff, and before you know it, you've played for 3, 4, 5 hours or whatever it is gone by. It's just part of the fun. So you said you're writing a lot of one shots. Where are those going?
I have my own website. It's Chance's Guild Hall. It's in the links of all my videos. So I've just been posting them there. I have two completed now, and then I have an extra three that I just have some editing work to do on them, and they'll be finished. So it's pretty good overall. I've been trying to put more of an emphasis on the videos I'm producing as of late,
Mm-hmm.
and between videos and actually running games, it's been a little bit hard to find time recently. But outside of that, whenever I have a spare moment, I'll hop on them and make sure everything flows the way I expect it to. Yeah, it's really interesting.
So what kind of stories and adventures do you like to write?
Um, I so there's like various different schools of DMing, right, or schools of thought around the idea of being a dungeon master. One of the more prominent ones I've been noticing recently is the idea of an open world. A lot of dungeon masters are drawn to this for reasons that I don't really fully understand. To be honest, it seems like a nightmare. But
Yeah.
so I do have personally, I do have a more rigid plot around a lot of my games. I find it helps to keep everyone in the same direction. And maybe that's my Adventures League past speaking in, but I do make it feel like all of the choices or all of the outcomes relate from what the party does. And I think that's more important. Um, in terms of the style that I write these one shots, though, I've aimed them at new dungeon masters in particular. I feel like there's a weird imbalance between the amount of people who want to play and the amount of people who want to DM. So if I can make DMing a more approachable idea to people, it'll create it'll help the hobby expand. So all of it's very, very, very clearly laid out.
Yeah, it always does seem like products that are aimed at making DMing easier tend to do better as well. Just because like that's one of the hurdles, and you're correct, and like there's way more players than there are DMs out there, and anything that helps those players cross over to the other side of the screen is definitely useful to the hobby.
Exactly. And what I do is in a lot of ways very similar to your out of the box encounters. Very similar. Like you can take any of the one shots and just plug them into most campaigns. It'll work fine. I give them a lot of examples on how to do that exactly, and walk them through the steps in approaching it. But it's very easy to do, very easy. So it's really convenient. And like they're only up for $1, so it's whatever. And I have a nasty habit of giving them away for free, so it is what it is. But that's kind of my way of rewarding the audience, right? So I have a discount code during the videos, and then if you comment, I also give you another discount code on top of that. So
How do
it's
you
relatively
discount it?
easy.
It's only $1.
I just give them away for free, you know. At that point, there's not really a lot of places I can go, but
Yeah.
it's good. And I think my skills are getting to the point now where I'm going to start approaching Kickstarters and basically doing the same thing there. It'll be fun. It'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
So I know you play D&D, and I know you play Pathfinder. Any other RPGs?
Not overlaid, no, but not because I don't want to at all. Like Mutants and Masterminds, we briefly touched on it. Sounds like a very interesting game. And same with I know it's not a game in of itself. Oh man, what's the game system that the people over at D&D Beyond are creating right now?
Oh, Cortex.
Cortex, yeah. I'm really interested in how that's turning out, but I don't know. Outside of that, not really.
Yeah. Any
Um,
interest in
I
the
have a
He-Man game?
No, kind of before my time in a lot of
It is before
ways.
your time.
Yeah. Um,
Uh,
but yeah, I don't know. I'm always open to playing games. It's just a matter of time constraint, right? As I'm sure you understand.
oh yeah, I mean, there's always far more games that I want to play than I have time to play.
Oh,
And also too, like it has gotten easier for us a little bit because more people are willing to run games for us, just because we know more people that are gamers, I guess. So that has opened up a lot of things for us as well, and it is so much easier if all you have to do is kind of show up and you can jump into a game and kind of get the experience than having
mhm.
to learn all the rules first and read this thick book and then start running it for other people. And I find like that happens a lot of times as
Yeah,
well.
I would agree. And to be fair, I find as Dungeons and Dragons in particular becomes more and more mainstream, I can only see these groups growing. Like really, I don't know anyone that's dissatisfied with 5e as a whole, except maybe the Rangers. A lot of Ranger mains aren't too happy with how 5e played out for them.
Yeah.
I made a. It's just a meme at this point, though, isn't it? It's like, uh, what's better than a Ranger with a bow? Every other class with a bow. Like it's not like not technically true, but it is. It is more true than it's not. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
I know. I've played a couple Rangers and I had fun with them, but
Hmm.
probably like my Rogue Scout is more effective at a lot of
Oh
the
yeah,
Ranger stuff than the Ranger is.
like a level 3 rogue outclasses a level 5 ranger in almost every way.
Well, yeah, they get all the expertises and stuff, so they're actually better at the skills that the Rangers should be good
Correct.
at.
Yes.
Um, Although I guess like they do have some abilities where you don't necessarily have to roll as much, but yeah, I don't
I
know.
don't know.
Because they excel at the exploration pillar, and it tends not to come up in games nearly as much. I think that's probably
And
the Ranger.
even then, I feel like the rogues are still better at the exploration pillar. Like even there are some cool multi-classing options with rangers. The Gloomstalker Ranger in particular has a very high synergy with a lot of the other classes, but the only reason you'd want to multi-class into that is if you had already multi-classed into rogue and gone with another subclass, right? Like there's not really a lot of upfront benefit over most of the other classes, and the arcane archer almost completely wiped out the ranger. So
The so we did the all Ranger D&D party. It's not up yet, but we shot it, and so when we do that, we have to like reanalyze the class and go, okay, what does this class actually do? What is it that they're good at? And honestly, the Rangers like exploration pillar, damage. All your subclasses just stack on ways to do more damage for the Ranger. So like there's a lot of sameness to that where other classes you're able to be like, okay, well, this subclass has some tanky features, or this one, is a little more skill heavy or a little social heavy or whatever. There's generally there was something else to them, but not with the Ranger. It's like, nope, they all just kind of do this one thing in a different way. So how do what flavor of damage do you want?
pretty pretty much. Um, to be fair, though, and I don't mean to harp on them too much, I have seen very skilled ranger players, very skilled, but in terms of scalability, it's a rough class to main in, that's for sure.
And to be fair, like you can analyze the mechanics and optimization, but none of that really affects fun necessarily, in my
It
opinion,
depends
right?
on it depends on the party and on the play
Yeah.
style as a whole. Um, no one likes to feel like a burden, though, no matter how you look at it. And I think that's the biggest detractor.
I guess like we don't play in a lot of groups that play like super specked out, right?
Interesting.
So it doesn't like show as much. And like even
Yeah,
like
okay.
in our games, like we'll have like one combat a session. So
Gotcha.
it
Uh,
just like everyone
yeah.
novas all the time anyway. So You're not really expecting more encounters. So playstyle is a huge part of that, like you said as well,
Mm.
and the group dynamic. But if
I
you're like you're having like 4 to 6 encounters a session, it's a there's a lot of like dungeon crawls. I could see how that would begin to show. So
mhm.
so not a fan of the Ranger, but Kaywood Publishing wants to know, what is your favorite class? You've already mentioned
um
spellcasters.
Sure. Yeah. So every game I play, for the most part, if spellcasting is an option, I usually main in that. In terms of my favorite caster, I find myself enamored with the Warlock more than anything else. Namely, the Celestial kind of Warlock. I find they're but okay. I'm not a power gamer per se, but there's this point where you understand the rules well enough where it's almost a shame not to take advantage of certain things, right? So I usually like I'm playing a game with Juice from Master of the Game right now, and I'm playing a Warforged Warlock that's gonna take a couple levels in Sorcerer and become a Coffee Lock after that, and that takes advantage of a lot of interesting features that are linked between the Warforged not needing to sleep, the Warlock getting back their spell slots on a short rest, and the Sorcerer's ability to convert sorcery points into spells. How it ends up working out is after every long rest, I'll have access to like I think it was like 20 odd spell slots after a long rest. So it's pretty interesting in terms of how it scales. But I went with the Izzet Engineer background. And when you do that, you gain access to an expanded spell list regardless of your class. And one of those spells is called Rope Trick. And Rope Trick creates an extra dimensional space for an hour that you and a party member, or you and up to, I think it was 6 party members. It might be 9, but I think 9 is Lehman's tiny hut, and 6 is Rope Trick. But whatever. So, anyways, it lets you slip away into an extra dimensional space for an hour, which coincides with the amount of time it takes for a short rest. So if I ever run short on spell slots, or if I'm ever in danger, I cast Rope Trick, and the component is a length of rope up to 90 feet. But because it says up to, it's equal to or less than 90 feet. So I cut like a foot-long piece of rope, and I use that, so I don't have to worry about fall damage or anything like that. And I don't have to worry about climbing the rope. I treat it like a key. So I do that a lot. It's an interesting way to play. To be fair, Crank is a coward, so it kind of suits him. But
I remember us making the joke about Rope Trick being an hour, which means it takes around to cast it, which so means you're 6 seconds shy of a full short rest. So
nah, no one buys into that. That's garbage. Rules as intended, 100%.
You get the rest of your short rest as you're falling out of your Rope Trick.
Wow, mine's on ground level, so joke's on you guys.
You don't have that far to fall.
It is one of those combinations that was an oversight by Wizards of the Coast, 100%. All of the Ravnica backgrounds that offer spells did not take into account the Warlock. It's really obvious when you go through that spell list. Like, you have spells like Call Lightning in there. And I'm like, man, it's going to be rough if I can summon this every short rest and then hide in my little Rope Trick hidey hole and just call down lightning on people. Like, you essentially become almost untouchable. It's really interesting.
Yeah. So I thought you couldn't get more sorcery points than your spell level. Like, you get capped.
Correct. The way around that is to convert them in the moment. So you're constantly converting sorcery points to spell slots, and then you take a short rest to convert your spell slots back to sorcery points and back to spell slots. Because your spell slots will reset on a long rest, but you get them back on a short rest. So it's a weird system.
But I still, like, you still can't. Well, I guess you can have more. You can have more spell slots than you have your max. You don't available. Have a maximum.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. It does reset after a long rest, but that's why it's called a coffee lock, is because you'd never take a long rest.
Yeah.
The old way of doing it was you take Aspect of the Moon, as one of your path
Invocation.
features. Yeah, your invocations, exactly. But with the Warforged, you don't need to do that, so it skips one step entirely. It's very, very interesting. Very interesting
Although I
build.
think don't they still need the rest? Like they still have to do like a 6 hour rest. It's not like they don't need to
It's
sleep.
optional. It is optional though. That's the benefit of it.
Or
It
is it
doesn't.
just you need to do that rest in order to get your
Long rest.
long
Yeah,
rest abilities
exactly.
back? Yeah. So,
Yeah, it's broken, man. Especially since I'm planning on getting Lehman's tiny hut. So if Juice wants to mess with me, he's gonna have to get a little bit more creative. He's been talking about it recently, and there are ways around it. But
someone's going to find themselves victimized by dispel magic.
yeah, it's true. That's the obvious way around it. But within the confines of the world, it's very difficult to make that judgment call because you'd have to see rope trick being cast first in order to know when to cast detect magic and
Yeah.
or dispel magic rather. And even then, that's still a resource investment. So I'd consider it a win no matter what.
It
But
depends on the enemies. So
it's
like
true.
unless you go out of your way to hide like your tracks and stuff like that, like
Mhm.
someone might come across just the way the players would, the tracks and be like, why do they just end here? Yeah. So a party of drow might figure that out, but party of
Mhm.
kobolds or goblins maybe not so much.
We're going up against kobolds and mercenaries, so I'm not super worried about it, to be
Yeah.
honest. And we're always heading towards them. We're never really running away from them, so
Yeah.
even more so. And we have some some of the tankiest people. Like I see BN Drake, he's in that campaign, and he's a very tanky barbarian. So it is nothing to be too concerned with. I find nothing to be too concerned with. But that's my style as a player, right? I like casters. I like utility.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. So I don't know. I think the warlock by itself is kind of one of the. It's an interesting class, but I also find it to be a bit overrated in
It
5e.
doesn't scale like at all. Almost as soon as you get past level 10, I don't know. Um, there's some interesting class features, I guess, but if you're looking at just maining warlock, I don't know. Do so at your own risk, you
They
know.
feel a bit samey after a while. I wish there was more
Yeah,
invocations to like modify different things about them the way
it's
it
true.
does with Eldritch Blast, right? Like if there was different paths you could take, I don't know if it would look like a different cantrip or abilities or whatever. I mean, the Hexblade made it, that was like pretty divergent from what was there before, and it made actually the blade lock feasible. Like before, it's a
Oh yeah,
cool
hugely.
idea. Before that, it was just a cool idea, right? Ted was playing a character. It was a higher level campaign, and he's like, I'll be a blade lock because that sounds cool. And then he realized it's like almost anything I can do is better than hitting it with this sword. So
It's true. Yeah, Path the Hexblade Warlock. It really opened up a lot of potential opportunities. Um, and that it was around that point where the Warlock really got taken seriously as a viable multi-class because the synergy between especially the Paladin and the Warlock are insane.
oh yeah.
Um, yeah, you get all your smites back on a short rest. I mean, it's pretty hard to resist just that. And then you factor in that you can now ritual cast, and that boosts your utility through the roof. And you can also self heal based on which warlock subclass you go with. And yeah, it's just the synergy is undeniable. Same with the sorcerer, and to a lesser extent the bard.
Although, I mean, I will to be in all fairness, you're like you get your smites back on a short rest, and I'm like, well, both of them. Um,
Yeah,
so
yeah, true. Yeah, good point.
I mean,
Yeah,
so like the short rest thing is cool, but at the end of the day, like, I mean, they max out at 4 spells eventually.
yeah,
Uh,
and the warlock can push past that, right? It's I don't know. I just think it's great. I
the
think it's really great.
It's weird. Like we did a staff fighter video, and we realized the way 5e is set up, you could use any stat but Constitution to fight with a staff with, and it's kind of
Oh, really?
bizarre. Yeah.
Oh, how? How'd you do wisdom? Just out of curiosity.
Wisdom was actually the
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I don't think that Shillelagh gives you proficiency with the staff, though. I think it just adds damage. Is that not the case? Yeah.
it lets you. Well, it's a simple weapon anyway. And I think everyone
True.
is proficient with the staff. Like I don't think there's any classes that can't use the staff.
Yeah, for sure.
And I don't
Yeah,
off the top of my head, I don't
that's a good
know
point.
if it mentions proficiency or not. Probably doesn't because it's a druid weapon and it's a druid spell. It just lets you use, the die 8 damage, and your wisdom is your for your attacking your damage.
That's a good point. No, I like it. Yeah, that's.
So
I think that really.
I
No,
was,
I was just about to say. Okay, you
you
go first.
You
Dave.
go first because I just have a
Okay,
question.
I will go first. I just really think that showcases off the ability to create very interesting characters still in 5e, right? But yeah, what's your question, Dave?
So the standard question around here is Joe always asks about what's your favorite dragon.
Oh God, Golden Dragon, definitely. I actually have a character in one of my one shots that's a golden dragon in disguise, and that feeds back into my love for magic, I guess, more than anything else. Um, I don't know, they're very interesting beings, and I like the fact that they set themselves up in a like a pseudo monarchy kind of fashion, right? It's very interesting.
They
Yeah,
are the
my
most
goal.
magicy.
Yeah, very true. My goal for the overall one shots I'm writing is to have them feed back into like one kind of epic story, right? So all of them are geared towards that, and the Golden Dragons play a pretty intricate role in all of that. So it's really nice. I like it. But yeah, Golden Dragons probably followed up by I don't know, maybe Silver, and then Black after that, and then maybe Green. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of Ice Dragons though. I think they kind of they mess with the dragon narrative too much because they're very dumb creatures and they're very solitary and they're basically just animals, right? So they give the dragons a bad name as far as I can tell.
That's funny. I guess they're dumb as far as dragons go. But once you get up
Exactly.
there in age, they're still like average intelligence.
Yeah, but average intelligence for an essentially immortal being is very disappointing.
they,
Like,
they when they hatch, they just get handed a dunce cap here.
I actually think I don't know. I think it depends what source you go off of, but I remember one of my kind of lore obsessed friends telling me that they commit infanticide. So I don't really know how their rearing process works. I'm not too sure.
But maybe, I mean, in the animal kingdom, oh, because it's probably because the mother would protect them,
Well,
because
lizards are very strange in that regard. Lizards and a variety of insects, infanticide is kind of the norm, right? At least it can be. And I think it's the territorial nature of the ice dragons. They don't like competition in their hunting areas, even if it's their own kin. I don't know.
other species kill their young. The males will kill the young because they want to mate again. So
Yes,
so,
that's very
so
common amongst dolphins. But that's a mammalian thing, right?
yeah.
It's very rare for that to happen in insects or reptiles. Yeah, that's
But,
really interesting.
so I think for the same reasons that the white dragon becomes kind of interesting because they aren't like other dragons in the sense that
True.
if they're more animalistic and bestial, like how do you negotiate with that?
You can't, right?
Yeah.
That's the short answer.
So if it creates a different kind of problem and dynamic, and they also have like their lairs tend to be more interesting.
Yeah, to an extent, it depends. Like that's a very subjective statement, right? Like I don't know. I'm not saying they don't have a purpose. I'm really not.
Well,
I think that
if not more interesting, more extreme, because you're dealing with
true. Yeah.
frozen conditions, icy waters, slippery ice. It's a lot more difficult than some of the other environments. Which
yeah, it's a different kind of danger overall. It's environmentally treacherous just through its mere nature, right? it's not really intended to be that way. Yeah, I don't know. And to be fair, I have used Ice Dragons several times, but I find, and I think this just calls back to my style of DMing, I find it doesn't lend itself to too many role play opportunities or creative solutions, right?
No, it's a fight.
It's a fight. Exactly.
It's a fight,
Not to say that,
and you're probably going to have to overcome some challenging environmental, hazards. For the most part.
I mean, not to say there isn't a place for fighting. Like there certainly is. It's, what the vast majority of classes are geared towards. But I don't know. I like dialogue and intrigue too much, I find.
Yeah. But there's always ways to get that in there, right? Maybe you got to negotiate.
True.
Maybe you got to negotiate with the tribe of walrus men that worship the white dragon to show you the secret way into its lair or something. I don't know.
What am I? Sorry, go for it. I'm just trying to pull something up here.
Yeah. Well, I'll let you pull that up, but we are coming up on the hour mark, so this is where we usually wrap things up. And I ask you for any final thoughts, but if you were pulling something up, we can talk about that real quick too.
Yeah, sure. If I don't know, I can't find it right now. But my favorite monster, it's this mold demon, and it was entered in the Morton Keenan's Tome of Foes. And it's like this CR12.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. I don't know the name of it because we did a video on like basically things that kill you without doing hit point damage, and that's one of them. It's moss. It's intelligent fiendish moss that forms around portals to the abyss. So it's like if you're fighting one of these things, there's a good chance that there's a portal to the abyss nearby. Which they're kind of crazy like that.
So one of the coolest things about that particular monster is you have to make wisdom saves when you're nearby it, or you are affected by the confusion table. And I have a nasty habit of throwing this abomination at like level 4 parties, right? And it's in a campaign where you can defeat it through alternative means. So that's a good example of how to make it so combat still has some relevance to diplomacy and intrigue, because you have to get rival factions on the same page and earn their trust. And then when it does attack, it's easier to take on because there's a sizable force against it. But if they don't do that, they just get wiped out.
Yeah, like when we were talking about it in the video, like one of the points we made is the confusion effect is like you may literally just wander off through a portal into the abyss.
That's so true.
Because you found your wisdom save.
Yeah. And it's a pretty high DC. Like it's an 18 for the DC, so it happens more often than not. It's really incredible. The Nilbogs are another one. They're it's like goblins spelled backwards, and I haven't seen a lot of DMs use them, but they're probably the most interesting low CR monstrosity out there for sure.
Yeah, Nilbogs are fun. I played a Goblin Blade who changed his name to Nilbog in hopes that people would be, in hopes that the other goblins would be like, well, he's probably not a Nilbog, but maybe he is a Nilbog, so just in case.
Yeah, they're demonically possessed goblins, if memory serves. It's very cool, very fun to roleplay them.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
so with that, we're going to wrap things up. Final thoughts before we head out?
You can go into the guild hall and just use code WELCOME. No capitals or anything needed, and you'll get a free one-shot if you guys want it. If not, completely understandable. They're like $1 each, so feel free to spend money if you like, but I won't make you.
And as always, the links are in the description as well as in the pinned comment after this isn't live anymore. And until next time, stay nerdy.